If you think the highway is empty at night, you're dead wrong. Out here, under the sodium glow of truck stop lights and the endless black ribbon of asphalt, the world changes. Most folks think the scariest thing on the road is a drunk driver or a blown tire. But those of us who live behind the wheel, we know better. We know the road keeps secrets, and sometimes it whispers them to you when you're alone, when the only company you've got is the hum of your engine and the static on the CB. I've been driving long haul for over 20 years. I've seen every kind of weather, every kind of person, every kind of trouble. I've watched the sun rise over empty plains and set behind mountains that look like the bones of the earth. I've sipped burnt coffee at 3 a.m. in diners where the waitress calls you Han and the pie tastes like cardboard, but you eat it anyway because it's warm and it's real. I've traded stories with other drivers, some true, some not, some you wish you could forget. But there are stories you only hear in whispers, late at night, when the parking lot is empty except for a few rigs idling in the dark. Stories that make you check your locks twice. Stories that make you keep the cab light off. Stories that make you wonder what's really out there, just beyond the reach of your headlights. Tonight, I'm going to tell you 3 of those stories. 3 true tales from the road, each one stranger, darker, and more unsettling than the last. Maybe you'll believe me. Maybe you won't. But after tonight, you'll never look at an empty highway the same way again. Let me tell you about the first time I realized the road was watching me. I've picked up my share of hitchhikers, but this one never left my truck. It was late October, the kind of night where the fog rolls in thick and low, swallowing the world outside your windshield. I was running a load of auto parts from St. Louis to Denver. Nothing special, just another long haul through the heartland. The radio was playing some old country tune, the kind that makes you feel lonelier than you already are, and my thermos was down to its last lukewarm inch of coffee. I'd been driving for hours, the road is straight, empty lines stretching into the dark. Routine. That's what keeps you sane out here. You get used to the rhythm. Drive, stop, eat, sleep, repeat. You learn to trust the familiar, the rattle of your rig, the glow of the dashboard, the way the headlights carve tunnels through the night. But every so often, the road throws you a curveball. Something you can't explain. Something that sticks with you long after the sun comes up. I was about 50 miles west of Kansas City, somewhere between nowhere and nothing, when I saw him. A figure standing on the shoulder, thumb out, head down, a battered duffel bag at his feet. He looked young, maybe early 20s, wearing a faded army jacket and jeans that had seen better days. I almost didn't stop. Company policy says you're not supposed to pick up hitchhikers. But I'd been on the road long enough to know that sometimes you just do what feels right. Or maybe I was just tired of my own company. I slowed down, rolled to a stop, and leaned over to crank the window. "You need a lift?" I called out. He looked up, and for a second, I thought I saw something strange in his eyes, something hollow, like he hadn't slept in days. But then he smiled, a quick, grateful flash, and nodded. "Yeah, if you're headed west." "Hop in," I said, unlocking the passenger door. He climbed up, tossed his bag on the floor, and settled into the seat with a sigh. "Thanks, man. Been out here a while. Name's Tyler." I introduced myself, and we shook hands. His grip was cold, colder than it should have been, but I chalked it up to the night air. I cranked the heat a little higher and pulled back onto the highway. For a while, we just talked. The kind of small talk that passes the time. Where you headed? What do you do? How long you been out here? He said he was trying to get to Colorado Springs, something about a job and a girl waiting for him. He didn't say much about his family, just that he'd left home young and never looked back. "You ever get the feeling," he said after a while, staring out at the fog, "that the road's got a mind of its own? Like it decides who gets to leave and who has to stay?" I laughed, trying to keep it light. "Sometimes I think the road's just bored and wants to mess with us." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, maybe." We drove in silence for a bit. The fog pressed in, thick and heavy, and the world outside shrank to the narrow cone of my headlights. The radio started to crackle with static, the music fading in and out, replaced by bursts of white noise and the occasional snatch of a voice I couldn't quite make out. "You get that a lot out here?" Tyler asked, nodding at the radio. "Sometimes," I said. "Weather messes with the signal. Or maybe it's just ghosts." He didn't laugh, just stared straight ahead, hands clenched in his lap. That's when I noticed the temperature. Even with the heat blasting, the cab felt cold, bone-deep cold, like the kind that settles in your chest and won't let go. I glanced at the dashboard, but the temp gauge was normal. I rubbed my arms, trying to shake it off. "You okay?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, in a low voice, he said, "You ever see something you can't explain?" I hesitated. "Out here? All the time." He nodded, almost to himself. "Yeah, me too." The miles slipped by, the fog growing thicker, the world outside turning into a gray blur. I started to feel uneasy, like we were driving through a dream. The road signs looked strange, the letters smeared and unreadable. The mile markers didn't make sense. One said 212, the next 198, then 205. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, but the numbers kept changing. "Hey, you see that?" I asked, pointing at the next sign. Tyler didn't look. "Don't pay attention to the signs," he said quietly. "They're not for us." That's when I started to get scared. Not the kind of fear you feel when you almost miss a turn or see a deer in the headlights. This was different. Primal. Like something was watching us from the dark, just out of sight. I tried to shake it off. "You want some coffee?" I offered, reaching for the thermos. He shook his head. "No thanks. I'm not thirsty." I poured myself a cup, hands shaking just a little. The coffee tasted bitter, metallic, like it had gone bad. I set it down, suddenly not hungry or thirsty or anything but tired. We drove on. The radio was nothing but static now, a low, insistent hiss that seemed to fill the cab. Tyler stared out the window, face pale in the dashboard light. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "You ever hear about the hitchhiker on this stretch of road?" I shook my head, trying to keep my voice steady. "No. What about him?" He turned to look at me, eyes dark and hollow. "They say he died out here. Years ago. Got picked up by a trucker, just like you. Never made it to where he was going. Some folks say he still tries to hitch a ride, hoping someone will take him home." A chill ran down my spine. "That's just a story," I said, forcing a laugh. He smiled, but it was a sad, broken thing. "Yeah, just a story." We drove in silence for a long time after that. The fog began to thin, the world outside slowly returning to normal. The radio crackled back to life, playing some old rock song. The temperature in the cab warmed up, and I started to feel like myself again. I glanced over at Tyler, meaning to ask if he wanted to stop for food, but the seat was empty. His duffel bag was gone. The passenger door was closed, locked from the inside. I slammed on the brakes, heart pounding, and pulled over to the shoulder. I got out, checked the road, the ditch, the back of the cab, nothing. No sign of him. It was like he'd never been there at all. I stood there for a long time, listening to the engine tick and cool, the night pressing in around me. Finally, I climbed back into the cab and sat there, staring at the empty seat. I don't know how long I sat like that. Eventually, I started the engine and drove on, the road stretching out ahead of me, endless and empty. I never saw Tyler again. But sometimes, late at night, when the fog rolls in and the radio turns to static, I catch a glimpse of someone in the passenger seat. Just a shadow, just for a second. And I remember his words. The road decides who gets to leave and who has to stay. There's something about that stretch of road no one tells you. Something that waits in the dark, hoping for a ride. And if you ever find yourself driving west of Kansas City on a foggy night, and you see a hitchhiker with a battered duffel bag, keep driving. Don't stop. Don't look back. I thought I'd seen it all until the next night, when I learned some things follow you home. If you've been around this channel, you know truck stops are where the real stories come out. Forget the horror movies and the urban legends if you want to hear what really keeps drivers up at night. You grab a booth at a greasy spoon off I-70, order the world's worst coffee, and listen. There's something about the hum of fluorescent lights and the clatter of plates that makes people loosen up, spill secrets they'd never admit out on the open road. I've heard it all in places like this. The guy who swears he saw a UFO hovering over a cornfield in Nebraska. The woman who claims her GPS led her straight into a ghost town that wasn't on any map. The old-timer who won't drive through Arizona after midnight. Not since he picked up a fare that vanished from his back seat without a trace. Some of these stories are just tall tales, the kind you swap to pass the time. But every now and then, you hear something that makes you wonder if maybe, just maybe, there's more truth to it than you'd like to believe. And of course, there are the regulars folks who know the difference between a rookie and a lifer just by the way you stir your coffee. They'll rib you about your first breakdown or the time you locked your keys in the cab at a Love's in Oklahoma. If you're lucky, they'll let you in on the inside jokes, like why you never order the special on a Tuesday, or what really happened to the guy who used to park in spot 17. But not all stories end at the diner. Some start when you leave the lights behind, when the road stretches out in front of you, and the only thing keeping you company is the low rumble of your engine and the secrets you carry. Which brings me to the second story, a delivery I wish I'd never taken. Ever been paid too much for a job? There's always a reason. If you've been driving long enough, you know the difference between a good haul and a bad omen. Sometimes the money's just too good, the instructions too specific, and the people hiring you, well, let's just say they don't look like the type who care about DOT regulations. This was a few years back, after a rough winter that left me behind on bills and desperate for a payday. I was sitting in a booth at a truck stop outside Amarillo, nursing a cup of coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, when a guy slid into the seat across from me. He wore a suit that didn't fit right and sunglasses, even though it was well past midnight. He didn't introduce himself, just slid a manila envelope across the table. "You're looking for work," he said. Not a question. I glanced at the envelope. "Depends on the work." He smiled, thin and humorless. "It's a simple run. Pick up a trailer at the old rail yard, drive it to a warehouse in Nevada. No stops, no questions, no opening the cargo. You'll be paid double your usual rate, half up front." I should have walked away. Every instinct told me this was trouble. But desperation has a way of making you ignore your gut. I took the envelope, felt the weight of cash inside, and nodded. "Any paperwork?" I asked. He shook his head. "Everything you need is in the envelope. Just follow the instructions. And remember, don't open the trailer. No matter what." He left before I could ask anything else. I sat there for a while, staring at the envelope, feeling the weight of my own stupidity. But money talks, and I needed it to shout. The next morning, I drove to the rail yard. The place was deserted, the kind of empty that feels wrong, like the world forgot about it. My trailer was waiting, a battered old 40-footer with no markings, just a padlock on the back and a set of fresh tires. I hooked up, checked the paperwork, just a single sheet with an address in Nevada and a phone number to call when I arrived. As I was finishing my walk-around, another driver pulled up. He looked rough, like he hadn't slept in days. He had my trailer, then me. "You running that load?" he asked, voice low. "Yeah. What?" He shook his head, glancing around like someone might be listening. "Just don't stop. And whatever you do, don't look inside. They say bad things happen to drivers who get curious." I tried to laugh it off, but he didn't smile. He just climbed back into his cab and drove off, leaving me alone with the trailer and a growing sense of unease. The first few hours were uneventful. The road was empty, the sky a flat, gray sheet. I kept the radio on, flipping through stations, but nothing seemed to stick, just static, old country songs, and the occasional burst of news about storms out west. I tried not to think about the trailer behind me, but every bump, every rattle, made me wonder what I was hauling. By the time I hit New Mexico, the sun was setting, painting the sky in bruised purples and reds. I stopped for fuel at a lonely station, the kind where the lights flicker and the attendant doesn't make eye contact. As I was filling up, I heard a noise from the trailer, a soft, rhythmic thumping, like something shifting inside. I froze, hand on the pump. The rules were clear: don't open the trailer. But curiosity is a powerful thing. I walked around to the back, pressed my ear to the metal. The thumping stopped. I waited, heart pounding. But there was nothing, just the wind and the distant hum of the highway. Back in the cab, I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was just the load settling or a loose strap. But the feeling of being watched wouldn't go away. I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting to see someone or something following me. A few hours later, I pulled into a rest area to stretch my legs. There was another truck parked at the far end, engine idling. As I walked past, the driver rolled down his window. "You running a special load?" he asked, eyes flicking to my trailer. I hesitated. "Just a job." He nodded, but his face was pale. "You hear anything back there?" I shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Just the usual." He leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. "They say some of those trailers, they're not meant to be opened. Not by us, anyway. You ever hear about the guy who hauled one out of El Paso? Never made it to his drop. They found his rig abandoned, doors wide open. No sign of him, just something inside. Something that wasn't supposed to get out." I laughed, but it sounded hollow. "You believe that?" He didn't answer, just rolled up his window and stared straight ahead. I got back in my truck, locked the doors, and told myself it was just nerves. But as the night wore on, the sense of dread grew. The thumping started again, louder this time, like something or someone was trying to get out. I cranked the radio, trying to drown it out, but the static only made it worse. Every mile felt longer than the last. At one point, I thought I saw something in the mirror, a shadow moving inside the trailer, just for a second. I told myself it was a trick of the light, but I couldn't shake the image. I started talking to myself, anything to break the silence. "Just a job," I muttered. "Just a job, just a job." But the thumping didn't stop. It got louder, more insistent, until it felt like the whole rig was shaking. I gripped the wheel, knuckles white, and kept driving, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Somewhere in Arizona, I hit a patch of fog so thick I could barely see the hood. The world shrank to the dashboard and the endless white wall outside. The thumping stopped, replaced by a new sound, a whisper, soft and urgent, coming from the CB. "Don't stop. Don't look. Keep driving." I stared at the radio, heart hammering. The channel was dead, just static. But the voice lingered, echoing in my head. I drove through the fog, hands shaking, until finally, the sky began to lighten. The sun rose, burning away the mist, and the world returned to normal. The thumping was gone. The trailer was silent. I made it to the warehouse in Nevada just after noon. The place was surrounded by a chain-link fence, topped with razor wire. A man in a black jacket met me at the gate, clipboard in hand. "You're late," he said, not looking up. "Had some trouble on the road," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. He nodded, checked something off his list. "Leave the keys in the cab. We'll take it from here." I climbed out, grabbed my bag, and walked away without looking back. As I reached the gate, I heard the sound of the trailer doors opening, a metallic groan, followed by a rush of cold air. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to see what was inside. I called the number from the envelope. The same voice answered. "Delivery complete?" "Yeah," I said, voice barely above a whisper. "What was in the trailer?" A pause. Then, "You did your job. That's all that matters." The line went dead. I never saw the man in the suit again. Never got another envelope. But sometimes, late at night, I hear that thumping in my dreams. Sometimes, I wake up with the taste of metal in my mouth, the memory of fog and static, and a voice whispering, "Don't stop. Don't look. Keep driving." Some things are better left locked up. But curiosity, it's a killer. I still wonder what I was hauling that night. What I might have unleashed if I'd given in and opened those doors. Maybe it's better I don't know. After that night, I swore I'd never break the rules again. But the road has other plans. You ever listen to the late-night CB channels? Sometimes you hear things you wish you hadn't. Out on the interstate, when the world's gone quiet and the only light comes from your dash, the radio comes alive with voices, some familiar, some you swear you've never heard before. It's like tuning into a secret frequency, a hidden world that only exists after midnight. Most of the time, it's just the usual chatter. Warnings about speed traps, jokes about the weather, a little friendly ribbing between drivers. But every so often, the tone shifts. The voices drop, get real quiet, and you know something's wrong. That's when the stories start. Breaker 19, you catch that static on mile marker 212? Don't stop, just keep rolling. Anyone else see those lights out by the old quarry? Didn't look like any rig I've ever seen. Hey, you hear about Big Mike? Picked up a load last week. Never made it to the drop. They found his truck, but not him. Just the radio, still on, playing the same song over and over. Sometimes, the messages aren't even words, just bursts of static, a voice cut off mid-sentence, or a long, drawn-out silence that makes your skin crawl. There are codes, too. Phrases that mean more than they say. Black dog on the shoulder means trouble ahead. Whiteout means don't stop for anything, no matter what you see. And then there are the stories you're not supposed to repeat. The ones that get whispered, half joking, half afraid, as if saying them out loud might make them real. There's one story they say you should never repeat, but I'm going to tell it anyway. This last one, it's the reason some truckers never drive at night. They say if you see the phantom convoy, you're already dead. That's the kind of story you hear in the dead of night, when the fog rolls in and the world outside your windshield feels like it's holding its breath. Most drivers laugh it off, call it a campfire tale for rookies. But every so often, you meet someone who has seen something they can explain, someone who won't drive after dark. Not anymore. I used to love night driving. There's a peace to it, a sense of belonging. Out there, you're part of a brotherhood, convoys of rigs rolling together, headlights cutting through the dark, CB radios crackling with jokes and warnings. You look out for each other. You keep each other awake. There's a comfort in knowing you're not alone. But that night, I learned just how alone you can really be. It started like any other run. I was hauling a load of produce from Fresno to Chicago, trying to make up time after a late start. The weather had been clear all day, but as dusk settled in, a thick fog crept over the highway, swallowing the world in a gray haze. Visibility dropped to nothing. I slowed to a crawl, hazard lights blinking, eyes straining for any sign of the road ahead. That's when I heard a voice on the CB, faint and crackling, like it was coming from 100 miles away. Breaker 19, anyone got their ears on? Convoy forming up at mile marker 88. All eastbound, let's roll. I hadn't seen another rig in hours, but the voice was warm, familiar, the kind that makes you feel like you're part of something bigger. I keyed the mic, trying to sound casual. Copy that. This is Redline. Mind if I tag along? A pause, then a chorus of voices, overlapping and distorted, like a dozen drivers talking at once. Plenty of room, Redline. Fall in line. Just keep your lights on and your speed steady. I felt a strange relief, like I'd stumbled onto a lifeline in the fog. Up ahead, I caught a glimpse of taillights, 3, maybe 4 rigs, their shapes barely visible through the mist. I eased in behind them, matching their speed, grateful for the company. The CB came alive with chatter. Stories about old hauls, jokes about dispatchers, warnings about the weather. But something felt off. The voices were too flat, too rehearsed, like they were reading from a script. And every so often, the signal would warp, words stretching and twisting into static. Hey, Redline, one of them said. You ever hear about the convoy that never stops? I laughed, trying to play along. Can't say I have. Sounds like a hell of a fuel bill. A different voice, deeper, almost metallic, cut in. They say it's made up of drivers who never made it home, lost in the fog, still running their route, looking for a way out. The others laughed, but it was a hollow sound, echoing in the static. I glanced at my mirrors, trying to get a better look at the rigs around me. Their headlights were too bright, almost blinding, and their shapes seemed wrong, too long, too tall, like shadows stretched by the fog. I told myself it was just the weather, just my imagination. But then I noticed the license plates. Every rig had the same plate, black letters on a white background, numbers that made no sense. I tried to read them, but they kept shifting, blurring at the edges. I reached for the CB, meaning to ask where we were headed, but the radio hissed, drowning out my words. The lead truck's taillights flickered, then vanished into the mist. The others followed, one by one, until I was alone again, the road empty and silent. I slowed to a stop, heart pounding. The fog pressed in, thick and suffocating. I checked my phone, no signal. The GPS spun, searching for satellites. I tried the radio again, but all I got was static. Then, out of the mist, the convoy reappeared, closer this time, their headlights burning like searchlights. They rolled past me, one after another, engines rumbling low and steady. As they passed, I caught glimpses of the drivers' faces, pale and expressionless, eyes fixed straight ahead. None of them looked at me. None of them blinked. The last rig slowed as it passed, and for a moment, I saw the driver's face gray, hollow, mouth twisted in a silent scream. He raised a hand, palm pressed to the glass, as if warning me away. The CB crackled to life. "Red line, you coming? Don't fall behind. The fog's not safe for strays." Against every instinct, I pulled back onto the road, falling in behind the convoy. The world outside was gone, no landmarks, no signs, just endless gray. The only thing that felt real was the line of trucks ahead of me, their taillights pulsing like beacons. We drove for what felt like hours, the same stretch of road looping over and over. The odometer barely moved. The clock on the dash flickered, stuck at 2:17 a.m. I started to wonder if I'd ever left that spot, if I was trapped in some kind of loop. The CB voices grew stranger, their words slurring and overlapping, sometimes speaking in languages I didn't recognize. I heard names I'd only ever seen on missing persons reports, drivers who vanished without a trace, their rigs found abandoned on empty highways. Some convoys never reached their destination, one voice whispered, and some drivers never come back. I tried to break away, to pull off at the next exit, but every ramp led back to the same stretch of road. The fog thickened, pressing against the windows, seeping into the cab. My breath frosted on the glass, and the air grew cold, heavy with the scent of diesel and something older, something rotten. I started to panic, slapping the dash, yelling into the CB. "Where are we? What do you want?" The lead truck's headlights flared, blinding me. The radio screamed with static, then fell silent. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the fog lifted. The world snapped back into focused trees, road signs, the faint glow of a distant town. The convoy was gone. I was alone, parked on the shoulder, engine idling. I checked the clock. It was 2:18 a.m. Only a minute had passed. I sat there, shaking, trying to convince myself it was just a dream, a trick of the fog and the night. But when I looked at my logbook, I saw a gap, 3 hours unaccounted for, miles I couldn't explain. And on the passenger seat, a scrap of paper I'd never seen before. On it, a single line, written in shaky, block letters, "Don't look back." I never told anyone what happened that night. Not really. But I started hearing stories, other drivers, other convoys, all lost in the fog. Some of them never came back. Some of them still call out on the CB, voices warped by static, searching for a way home. Now, whenever the fog rolls in and the radio goes quiet, I keep my eyes on the road and my hands on the wheel. If I see headlights in the mist, I don't fall in line. I don't answer the call. Some convoys never reach their destination, and some drivers never come back. If you ever see headlights in the fog, don't look back. I didn't, and I'm still here. For now. So, that's what the road gave me: 3 stories, 3 warnings, and a lifetime of questions that still keep me up at night. Maybe you're listening with the lights on, thinking you're safe in your living room. Or maybe you're out there right now, parked at a rest stop, engine ticking as the night closes in. Either way, don't get too comfortable. The road has a way of finding you, no matter where you are. If you've got a story, drop it in the comments. Maybe next time, I'll tell yours. Out here, we're all just trying to make it to the next sunrise. And sometimes the only thing that keeps us sane is knowing someone else has seen what we've seen. Or worse, there are more stories out there some too dark to share. Yet, I hear them in the static, in the half-whispered confessions over bad coffee, in the silence that falls when someone asks about the ones who never made it home. Every truck stop, every mile marker, every stretch of empty highway has its secrets. And the road? The road remembers them all. So next time you're driving at night and the fog starts to roll in, or you catch a flicker of movement in your rearview mirror, just remember, not everything you see can be explained. Not every story has an ending. The illusion of safety is just that, an illusion. Out here, the unknown is always closer than you think. Remember, the road never forgets. And neither do I.